Hello and welcome. This is Lucas Rockwood with Absolute Yoga Academy, and this is a day in the life of a yoga teacher. It's a quick glimpse into the teaching life for someone who is passionate about yoga and considering becoming a yoga teacher. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is your schedule. A lot of potential teachers are wondering what their daily schedule would look like. Just to give you an idea, most teachers worldwide are actually teaching part-time, meaning less than 7 classes per week, and they're usually doing something else on the side. Maybe they're a parent, maybe they are going to university, maybe they have a second job or a second practice, a massage therapist, a personal trainer, but most teachers around the world are teaching part-time. Full-time teachers are becoming more and more common, and full-time teachers typically teach between 10 and 15 classes per week, often 6 days per week. So people would generally teach 2 to 3 classes per week, 5 to 6 days per week, and that would be considered a full-time teacher, which is becoming more and more common with more teaching opportunities around. So here's the good news about your schedule. The first thing is it's very, very flexible, often on short notice. So for people who are parents, for people who are students, for people who are studying, for people who simply like to have a spontaneous lifestyle, yoga teaching can be a really great option. You also have lots of free time, often every single day. So again, for people who have a lot going on, for people who are musicians, for people who are artists, people who are just creative types and like to have lots of free time, even full-time yoga teachers tend to have a lot of free time every single day. It's the opposite of a 9 to 5 routine. So that structure, that regularity is all completely gone. So for somebody who really likes to live outside of the norm, it's a really great option. You'll have time and flexibility to explore other interests and perhaps even keep up with a lifestyle that would not otherwise be possible. So I have yoga teacher friends who are musicians, yoga teacher friends who are clothing designers, writers. My first year teaching yoga full-time, I wrote a novel, play guitar, all these kinds of things. You really can have time. I know other teachers who are surfers. Other jobs would not really allow that, but for people doing yoga, it really does allow that flexibility. Travel is a huge one. Every yoga teacher I know is really passionate about travel. Yoga teaching really enables that. I've taught in 5 different countries. Lots and lots of teachers I know love to travel and teach. It's also a great opportunity for personal study. When you get really into yoga, there's lots of great destinations you can go to enhance your career. And even for people who have a second job that they already love, yoga teaching can be really great in terms of scheduling. So here's the bad about your schedule. Often you have to work weekends, evenings, and holidays. So if you're a person who loves the Monday to Friday with the weekend off, it's kind of hard to do with yoga. Evenings are a really peak time for yoga classes, so the more you get into this, the better a teacher you are, the more likely you are to have regular evening classes. And often holidays need to be worked as well. The holidays can be worked around, but the evenings and weekends are something you definitely need to consider. Sometimes you'll work in the morning and then again in the evening with an awkward gap in the middle of the day. So what happens in yoga is there are peak times. There's usually a peak morning class. Depends on the city, but it's usually around 9 or 10 a.m. And then there's a peak evening class, which is usually around 6 or 7 p.m. It depends on the city. And so, again, as you get busier as a teacher, you might have to work both in the morning and in the evening, which means you don't have mornings off or evenings off. You have kind of this awkward gap in the middle of the day. Now, if you're a person who is used to creative scheduling, who's used to making up your own schedule and your own time, that might be really great. For some people, they find it a little frustrating. They're not sure what to do in the middle of the day. All their friends are at work. With that in mind, you might find that your work schedule doesn't match up with your friend's schedule, so it might be more difficult to keep up with your normal social life. If you're someone who always goes out with your girlfriends or your guy friends on a Thursday night, you might have to work every Thursday night. If you're somebody who's used to planning social gatherings every Friday night, again, might not be able to do that if you're working full-time as a yoga teacher. And if you get sick or have an injury, most studios are going to be unable to pay you. And if you come from a corporate background, that can be a little bit of a jolt, a little bit of a change. So here's the other question that I always get is how much do teachers earn? So this really depends on where you live. The pay in Paris or Barcelona is very different than London or New York. But typically, if we're talking about $25 to $50 per class, with the average somewhere around $40 per class in most developed markets. Now, this is going to vary a lot. If you're in Kuala Lumpur, it might be lower. If you're in Southern Europe, the rates are very low. But mostly that gives you a good range with the average around $40 per class. Now, there are expensive cities like London, New York, San Francisco. Often the pay there will start at $50 per class and go up from there just because of the economics of that city. Any teacher anywhere in the world who's earning $75 per class or more is highly paid really anywhere. And someone earning $100 per class is on the very highest end of the scale. The studio business model doesn't really support teachers who are paid more than that, just to give you an idea of the range where you could potentially grow and go to so you can plan. Some studios do pay based on a class attendance or via a revenue share, but these studios are not that common anymore. The way these studios work is perhaps it's kind of like if you've ever had a server job at a restaurant. You'll get a very low base salary, maybe $7 per class, and then $2 or $3 for every student who comes to class. These studio models do exist, but they're much more rare these days. It's an older model that's hard to sustain in a lot of studios. So the pluses and minuses of teacher pay. Well, in general, your hourly rate is really pretty good for a job that you love and a job that's rewarding. To get paid $40, $50 an hour is really pretty good pay. The challenge is managing your energy. You just can't teach 40 hours per week doing yoga. But trust me, I know people who've tried. They don't last very long. And so what happens is you have a good hourly rate, but you can't fulfill those hours, and so you end up sometimes with a pay scale that's a little bit challenging in terms of lifestyle. You're rarely paid for vacations, sick days, and public holidays. Most studios don't pay you if you don't work. Now, some of this is changing. At my studios, for example, we do pay for holidays, a ton of holidays. My teachers have 6 or 7 weeks of paid holidays. They do get sick days. They do get a fixed salary. They do have a living wage, and so there is a movement to change this. But again, most studios don't offer this, so the reality is currently there are small studios like me making the changes, but for the most part that's not the case. In most cities, teachers are also hired as freelancers, so they're independent contractors, not employees. Why does this matter? Well, this matters because you have to do your own taxes. It might make it more difficult for you to get an apartment or to get a mortgage if you wanted to buy a home. There's certain financial things where it's advantageous to have a full-time contract. For some of you, for a lot of you, it might not matter at all. In fact, it might mean that you have more flexibility in terms of your finances. Now again, this is changing too. All of my teachers are contracted full-time employees, and not a lot, but a small minority of studios are moving in this direction as the industry becomes more professional. But the going trend when you're out there is most teachers are hired as freelance independent contractors. So here's your work quality at a glance. Work quality meaning what does it feel like? How rewarding is it? The biggest thing for me is you have a huge impact on your students' lives right away. You see people transform, you see people make changes. That's incredibly, incredibly fulfilling on a personal level. Much more fulfilling than many other jobs that you may have had in the past, which, not to diminish their importance at all, but that personal satisfaction of watching somebody change, it's hard to really match that. You help people get in shape, to lose weight, to relieve stress, to find meaning and purpose in their lives, and you see it very quickly. People will come in, their bodies will change, the smiles on their faces will change, their social group will change. In my studios, we've had now 4 different marriages, 3 different children, all legitimate, come out of my studios, and that is really enabled by the community that builds around a yoga teacher in their studio. So for yoga students, their studio is like their second home. And what I mean by that is it's a place where they can relax. It's a place where they feel like they're at home and they can make friends and really be themselves. You'll create a local community where people feel supported in their health and wellness goals. And this is so important. For most adults, everything they do socially revolves around alcohol. And that sounds really weird, but think about it. Every single adult activity, there's almost always alcohol involved. Yoga studio is one of these rare places where people can go and have it be all about health and still be social. Last but not least, you create a bond with students that can last a lifetime. I have students from 10 years ago who I'm still in touch with, who I still see regularly, and it's really amazing to have the work you did years ago still be involved in your life today. Here's your work challenges at a glance, and these are things you really need to look at honestly because it's not all unicorns and rainbows. The biggest challenge with yoga teachers is burnout. Burnout is a huge problem. People teach too much and they lose their fire for teaching and for practice. Burnout is a big deal. You often hit an income ceiling within 3 years. So what's an income ceiling? Well, let's say you are a fantastic teacher and your classes are packed and you teach Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights at 7 p.m. It's the busiest class of the week. And your salary started at $50 per class and now you're up to $65 per class. Well, guess what? That studio, no matter how busy your classes are, they can only pay you so much. And maybe that number is $65 per class. So within 3 years, you've hit your income ceiling. And that can be kind of a funny feeling. It's not that yoga teachers want to be rich. Most yoga teachers I know don't want to be rich, but as you get older, life gets more expensive, not less expensive. We get children or aging relatives or other financial obligations. It's just kind of part of life. And so for a lot of yoga teachers, 3 years in, they have this wake-up call and they say, wow, I've hit the ceiling. What do I do now? Well, there's lots of different options to continue to grow your income, but doing more of the same is not the best option. So you just need to plan for that. You need to think ahead. Is it going to be studio ownership? Are you going to start doing retreats and workshops and trainings? Are you going to create products or services? All of these things are very, very accessible, but you do need to keep in mind that if you just plan to teach classes, within 3 years, you'll probably hit an income ceiling. Last but not least, teachers often neglect their personal practice. This is a huge, huge problem, and from there everything falls apart. If you're not practicing, if you're not engaged, if you're not excited, if you're not learning, it's really hard to get your students excited about learning. It's so fundamental, but it comes from that burnout. When you're feeling burnt out, it's hard to motivate to get on your mat, but I promise you, the best teachers in the world are the best students in the world. The more they practice, the more energy they have to bring to their classes. And so this is something you really need to make sure, no matter what you do in your teaching career, make sure you've got time and energy to fire up your own practice. So here's the life of a yoga teacher. Just my quick overview summary. This is a short presentation, but hopefully just can give you some insight. I'm a studio owner. I have 2 studios right now and more on the way. I've certified over 1,800 yoga teachers, worked in 4 different countries, so I have a pretty good idea about the good, the bad, and the ugly of teaching yoga, and hopefully this has given you some insight. So in summary, you can enjoy a flexible schedule, you can travel, you can have time for personal study and personal fulfillment that very few other jobs can offer. At least I don't know of many other jobs that can offer this. You can earn a comfortable living in many cities around the world. This is becoming more and more true. There are opportunities in the developed world, the developing world, and everything in between. You need to be sure not to overwork yourself, and be sure not to lose your personal practice and passion that brought you to yoga in first place. So whatever you get into, make sure to focus on you and your practice first. Everything good will come from there. You need to be realistic with your financial goals and make sure you're setting yourself up for success. If you know that 5 years from now, in order to be happy, that you need a house and a boat and 3 cars, you need to plan accordingly. I find most yoga teachers have very simple financial goals, but even simple financial goals need a plan, and there is a plan available. You just need to plan in advance. So I hope that's been helpful. Again, my name is Lucas Rockwood. I'm the managing director and co-founder of Absolute Yoga Academy. We're one of the largest yoga teacher training schools in the world. So we do lots and lots of work certifying teachers, helping teachers find their way, coaching on studio ownership, and all kinds of things in between. This picture you're seeing right here is Absolute Sanctuary, which is our dedicated teacher training facility on Koh Samui Island in Thailand. And this is where everything got started with Absolute Yoga Academy. And we run courses here about every other month. We have hot yoga courses, vinyasa yoga courses, we have a Bryce yoga course, and we even have a level 2 course for existing teachers. We also run courses in Europe and other parts of Asia, and soon other parts of the world as well. And so if you are not yet a teacher, or if you're a teacher and looking to advance your career, please do check out our courses at absoluteyogaacademy.com. You'll also find a contact form there where you can contact myself, my staff, and my teaching team directly. We're happy to help with any questions that you might have about the life of a yoga teacher, about teacher trainings, or anything else that you think we might be able to help with. Thanks again for your interest. I hope this has been helpful and given you some insights, and I look forward to hearing from you very soon. Goodbye for now.